What the happened in Super Bowl XXIII? It's January 22nd, 1989, and Joe Robbie Stadium in Miami's buzzing. The year culminated in a looming football dynasty facing off against a high-powered, innovative underdog. But the journey both these teams took to get here, one could say absolute madness. In one corner, you had the San Francisco 49ers. Based on their pedigree, you'd think they were a juggernaut, but their 1988 regular season was a complete roller coaster. They suffered brutal losses to the likes of the Raiders and the Cardinals, sitting at a lukewarm 6-5 at one point. Head coach Bill Walsh was facing intense media scrutiny, and a fierce quarterback controversy was brewing between the legendary but aging Joe Montana and the young, dynamic Steve Young. But San Francisco caught fire late, rallying to finish 10-6, winning the NFC West and demolishing Chicago in the playoffs. Fueled by Montana's ice-cold precision and a third-year wide receiver named Jerry Rice, who was actively turning the position into an art form, the Niners were dying to prove that their status as the team of the 80s wasn't a fluke. Across the field stood the Cincinnati Bengals. If the Niners were a legacy franchise trying to hold on to power, the Bengals were explosive in a new wave. Cincinnati completely dominated the AFC, finishing 12-4 behind the brainy, pioneering, no-huddle offense designed by head coach Sam Wyche. They were led by a regular season MVP, Boomer Esiason, a left-handed gunslinger with an absolute cannon for an arm. Alongside him was the devastating 230-pound rookie fullback, Ickey Woods, whose famous Ickey Shuffle touchdown celebration captivated the entire country. The Bengals were the highest-scoring offense in the National Football League, combining brutal physical running with an aerial attack that could stretch a defense to its absolute breaking point. 7 years prior, the Bengals had lost to these same 49ers in Super Bowl XXIII, and this was their shot at redemption. The Niners received the opening kickoff, moving the chains with a Montana to Craig connection, but they found trouble finding footing early, narrowly avoiding a disaster as the 3rd and 10 snap fell from Montana's hands, and they'd be forced to punt away their first drive. The Bengals' first drive started off with some fireworks. On their first play, Boomer dropped back and flung a high ball out to Eddie Brown, who'd climbed the ladder for it on the sideline for a quick burst before they'd find themselves on 3rd and short, where Ickey Woods weathered a big hit from Ronnie Lott past the line to gain. Things would come to an end for their drive here, and watch this play, guys. It's 3rd and 5. Tim McGee takes a huge shot to his knee, dropping the ball, and can someone please explain to me how this man was okay? Here's a freeze frame from this play. Like, his knee is bent straight up the wrong way. Well, miraculously, he was fine and played the rest of this game. Cincy punted back to the Niners, pinning them deep, and on their third play of the drive, tragedy struck. Defensive tackle Tim Krumrie, the emotional leader and anchor of the Bengals defensive line, twisted his leg awkwardly while trying to tackle Roger Craig. The injury was a horrific, compound fractured ankle. Nightmare stuff. The Bengals lost their best run stuffer before the game could even breathe, forcing them into a defensive scramble where Montana started gaining some momentum, finding Rice for a big play over the middle, getting moved across midfield with the assistance of a roughing call on the Bengals, but the defense managed to rally, forcing Montana to throw on the run, giving Rice no chance for a first down, holding them to a Mike Kofor kick that put them up 3-0. The Bengals managed to pick up a single first down on their next attempt, with Woods going against the grain for it, but Ronnie Lott would come downhill and deliver the pain on his next carry, and before you knew it, they were punting again. The Niners finally manufactured another threat late in the first quarter, starting off with a one-handed circus catch on the sideline by the GOAT, before going back to him again, going vertical deep downfield, dropping it seamlessly over his shoulder to get them knocking on the door, but they'd call a peculiar fullback dive to Rathman on 3rd and long, and he'd actually almost convert it. Close. No cigar. San Francisco'd opt to settle for the chip shot field goal attempt, but Mike Kofor stepped up and hooked it completely wide left due to a bobbled snap. Boomer and the Bengals went 3 and out again, with him throwing for Brown just shy of the sticks, and they'd line up and boot it away to John Taylor, who'd lose track of it to the wind before chasing down the runaway ball, making an ill-advised recovery, shrugging off a few tacklers, and reversing field for an electric return that took him out of bounds past midfield on Cincy's side. Unbelievable. The momentum from the big play wouldn't last long, though, as Montana's check down for Harry Sidney almost proved disastrous, as it was lateral, and the back wasn't looking for it in time, having to dive on it just to retain possession. On the following 3rd and forever play, they'd dial up an outside handoff for Craig, and he'd get moving into open space, but on contact, he'd get the ball ripped free, with Cincinnati hustling to it for the recovery. Before they could even finish showing the replay, Esiason tossed it out to his big wide receiver and future Patrick Mahomes glazer, Chris Collinsworth, for a good gain. They'd lean into the run game, letting James Brooks go straight downhill, plowing into Niner territory, but on the following 3rd down, Charles Haley and Danny Stubbs would meet at the quarterback, creaming Boomer for a big-time sack, getting the ball back for Montana and the offense once more. But It'd end up in another exchange of punts as San Fran's offense shot themselves in the foot with a holding call. They'd have to boot it to Cincinnati from their end zone. The lefty rolled left on second down, connecting with indestructible knee haver Tim McGee on a shot play to get into scoring range, where they'd stall out, Esiason throwing a near pick on 3rd and short, going for it all, having to peel himself off the ground for what felt like the 5th time of the game so far. Jim Breach put through the field goal to tie things up, 3-3 nearing the end of the half. The Niners got it one final time, once again finding themselves blundering into a 3rd and forever situation where they once again ran their go-to 3rd and long play, fullback dive with Rathman, and they'd boot the ball away to Cincinnati, who'd kneel on the ball just outside their own end zone. They'd go into the intermission deadlocked at 3-3. This was the first halftime tie in Super Bowl history. If the first half was a chess match, the 3rd quarter was where the bombs started to drop. The Bengals ground out a long drive to start the half, kicking things off with a few icky shuffles or taking a shot for Collinsworth on the post, and he'd have to dive into the grass to snag the field-flipping ball. He'd look for his back Brooks next, hitting him on the rail route and letting him run after the catch, tiptoeing down the sideline for a few more. A few plays later, they'd find themselves on 3rd and long where Boomer'd go back to his favorite receiver Collinsworth, who'd once again use all 6'5" of himself to go up and get it for another first. The long drive would come to an end as self-inflicted wounds kept backing them up. They'd once again have to settle, with Breach's long kick claiming the lead finally, 6-3 deep in the 3rd. A face mask on the kickoff set Montana and the Niners up in premium position, but they weren't able to do much with it, as Montana rolled right and hustled for a first down, and they'd get another with a little Jerry Rice catch and run off the stick route, but after that, Montana'd get sacked, and Craig wouldn't be able to hang on to his pass on 3rd down at the sticks. They'd have to punt it back to the leading Bengals. They wouldn't hang on to it long, though, as Boomer rolled to his left and fired right to Romanowski lurking in the flat, and the big linebacker tip it to himself for the pick, and the punt to the heating up Bengals ended up being a prime scoring opportunity for the Niners. One that they'd squander because 3 plays left them short of the sticks, a 4th and 1 that almost any offense would go for nowadays, but back then, they opted to take the points. Kofor booted it through to tie things back up at 6. Then came the spark that Cincinnati was begging for. On the ensuing kickoff, Stanford Jennings fielded the ball deep in his own end zone, and like a bolt of lightning, found a seam up the middle, broke an ankle tackle at the 30, and exploded into the open field. 93 yards, eventually tripped into the end zone by Sidney for a stunning kick return touchdown, and just like that, the Bengals held a 13-6 lead. The craziest thing was, Montana and the Niners weren't rattled at all on their next possession. In fact, you could say they finally locked in because Montana started cutting it loose, flipping it to Rice to kick things off, with a balancing act on the sideline for some big-time run after catch to end the 3rd quarter, or airing it out down the sideline to his running back, Roger Craig, who'd catch it in stride, plowing through a few defenders to get them inside the red zone. Montana'd throw a near pick to Lewis Billups, but the best ones have a short memory, and on the next play, Montana lofted it to Rice on the corner route, and he'd haul it in, diving over the pylon for the score, clutching up in the dawning 4th quarter, tying the game back up at 13-13. The Bengals had a quick drive that never fully materialized with a few nice runs by Icky, but ended with a few wide misses by Boomer, resulting in a punt that San Fran was lucky to recover after an insufficient fair catch signal by John Taylor led to him getting blown up, losing the ball. Montana started the drive heaving an absolute bomb for who else but the GOAT, who hauled it in despite the double coverage. Moss and Billups threw a big hit from the safety, and while they'd gotten into scoring range in a flash, they'd also go cold in a flash, missing the mark 3 plays in a row, looking for a game-tying kick from Kofor, but they wouldn't get one on the long kick as he'd miss right at the upright. The Bengals, smelling blood in the jungle, aimed to eat up most of the clock and take the lead. Boomer tossed up a jump ball to Ira Hillary, coming back to it, convert the daunting 3rd and 13 that they found themselves in. Before Icky'd rip off a big one going around the edge for about 9, he'd toss the jump ball for his back down the sideline, with James Brooks getting a favorable call from the officials initially, as he was definitely out. They found themselves on 3rd and 11 a few plays later, and they conservatively opted to just run the ball, taking a little more time off the clock, and Breach would put through his 3rd field goal of the game to put them up 16-3 with a little over 3 minutes left in the game. To make matters worse for San Francisco, an illegal block on an ensuing kickoff pinned them all the way back to their own 8-yard line, 92 yards away from a championship with the season on the line. Montana then executed one of the most cold-blooded, high-stakes drives in Super Bowl history. He started off with a quick strike to Craig underneath, followed by a surgical completion to the tight end John Frank. Next play, a buttery bullet to Jerry Rice on the out pattern to keep things going. The clock was now inside the 2-minute warning, But the clinic continued. Craig slipped forward to convert a crucial third down before Montana put a smooth toss on Rice again, going to the corner to cross midfield. Another dump down with run after catch to Craig got them rolling even further before they'd get backed up by an ineligible man down field call, backing them up to a monumentous 2nd and 20, which they converted immediately, with Montana heaving over the middle for Rice again, and he'd clear the nearby defenders except one who'd bring him down in the red zone. And now tying the game wasn't the only thing on the table, winning it was too. They'd dump it underneath to Craig again, taking them to the 10-yard line, and with 39 seconds remaining, Montana snapped it and fired a laser beam through traffic into the hands of John Taylor to go up 20-6 with 34 crucial seconds remaining on the clock. Boomer'd try, and Boomer'd fail to get his team into the end zone. The final seconds ticked away as his desperate last gasp Hail Mary fell harmlessly incomplete. The final whistles blew, the scoreboard reading 20-6, and the 49ers hadn't just won a football game. They had executed the ultimate high-wire act on sport's grandest stage, with Joe Montana solidifying his reputation as the most clutch quarterback to ever live, while Jerry Rice took home Super Bowl MVP honors after a mind-boggling 11-catch, 215-yard performance. Boomer Esiason and the Bengals were left completely heartbroken, coming inches away from a title, while Bill Walsh rode off into the sunset, announcing his retirement just days later, cementing this 49ers squad as an all-time dynasty.